Good morning, buenos días para todos. Welcome to our international webinar called Dealing with Climate Change and Disaster Risk in Informal Settings in Latin America and the Caribbean, Theoretical and Practical Considerations. Thank you very much for being here today, for meeting us today and discuss with us the experiences of what we have called the ADAPTO project. This seminar has actually two goals. One is to present the results of a 4-year-long project we conducted recently in Latin America and the Caribbean, dealing with issues of climate change and disaster risk reduction in places such as Cuba, Colombia, Chile, Haiti, and other places. And the second objective is also to discuss and reflect on that work and trying to see what can be new avenues of research and practice in climate change responses for the region in Latin America. And for that, we have organized this seminar, which is going to be actually a mix of English and Spanish. So one of the important things that we have realized in the work in the past few years is that there are significant barriers to the work that some scholars conduct in Latin America and the work that some others conduct in northern countries, in Canada, the US, and Europe. And one of the issues is certainly the English barrier, among other difficulties of working across countries. But we're hoping that this seminar today will help us bridge a little bit that gap, and through a mix of English and Spanish, we're going to be able to understand each other and discuss issues that are pertinent for both. So bear with us if you don't, if you're not fluent in English or Spanish. Somehow we're going to end up understanding each other, I hope. I want to remind everybody that we're using this morning Zoom webinars, which is a little bit different from Zoom meetings, which we're more used to. In this new format, well, in this seminar format, the participants do not have camera or microphone activated in the beginning. So when you ask a question or you refer to the panel, I would appreciate if you could write your questions in the chat. And then in the discussion at the end, for example, after each roundtable, we could activate your camera and microphone so you can interact with the panel. But again, the best way to start is just typing your question or comment on the chat, and I'm going to read it here, and then we can activate your camera and microphone. It is important to say that we're recording this seminar for purposes of research and dissemination. So your screen is not going to be, your camera is not activated, so hopefully it's going to be okay for everybody. We can only see the panelists on the screen. So again, please, if you have comments or suggestions or questions, type them on the chat. I want to thank many people for the organization of this event, in particularly IDRC, the International Development Research Center, that has funded our research for the past 4 years, including the organization of this event. So thank you to Melanie Robertson, who is our project officer at IDRC, and many other people from her team who has made this possible. I also want to thank Benjamin for all the work he has conducted over the past 4 years in this project and in organizing this activity, and extend my gratitude to all the members of the ADAPTO team. I'm talking about more than 40 people, including professors, students, staff, who have been actively working in this journey of research and action in climate change reactions in Latin America. And I also want to acknowledge the work of the technical team at University of Montreal, Brigitte, and all the people from the technical team at UDM who make this possible. So in terms of the format for today, we're going to have a keynote speaker opening the discussion and opening the session. We have invited a key scholar in this area, and I'm pretty sure that you're going to find him very interesting. Following Roberto's presentation, we're going to have 2 roundtables. One is going to be dealing with practical actions on the ground how we are dealing with climate change adaptation or climate change responses from the ground, with experiences from, again, different countries we have worked in the past few years, including Colombia, Chile, Cuba, and Haiti. And then we're going to have a second roundtable, and this one is a little bit different. Here we want to reflect on one of the key issues that guided this project in Latin America, and it's the issue of gender. We want to reflect on that and see what we found, what can be done in the future, and how issues of gender and feminist approaches can modify the way we understand risk and disasters and climate change in the region. So it's going to be a moment to reflect on results, but also anticipate a little bit how we can maybe establish new epistemologies of risk and disasters based on cosmologies and ideas and practices that we find that we're finding on the ground. This conference today is a mix of two things: reflecting on theoretical principles and ideas and epistemologies about risk, but also reflecting on practical issues we found on the ground after this 4-year-long project called ADAPTO. ADAPTO is actually the short name of this project, called Climate Change Adaptation in Informal Settings, Understanding and Reinforcing Bottom-up Initiatives in Latin America and the Caribbean. So I want to introduce maybe 2 or 3 things about this project so you can better understand where we're coming from, and then we move to the discussion. I would say that ADAPTO is one of the most ambitious recent initiatives in terms of number of participants and impact on budget of research and action in disaster risk reduction and climate change response in informal settings in Latin America and the Caribbean. And here, maybe there are 2 or 3 keywords I want to emphasize. One is research and action. So we conducted case studies and empirical research and ethnographic methods in the places you can see here in the map, but we also implemented projects and acted on the ground by supporting local leaders. So our implementation component was based on providing resources to local leaders in informal settlements and follow up during 4 years what they were doing with those resources and with those and with that capacity and new training, and understand their practices, their local practices, understand how they react to climate change. And we were trying to listen to them as much as possible, listening to their narratives and understanding why they are using resources in a certain way, what is of interest for them, how they interact with other people, how do they conduct climate activism from the bottom up, how they start these movements of working with people on the ground to change things in their settlements. And this is basically what we tried to do for the past 4 years, following up these leaders, following up their actions, understanding what they're saying, understanding what their claims are, and then trying to learn from their bottom-up practices, trying to learn from what they are doing on the ground, rather than coming with an idea of what they should be doing or what governments should be doing. We kind of reversed the whole thing and said, why don't we see what they are doing first? And then we try to theorize from that and draw conclusions and maybe draw some conceptual frameworks that can help us in the future. So if I had to summarize these 4 years of work in one sentence, I would certainly say that dealing with climate change requires much more than technical solutions. This is basically our main conclusion, maybe not that surprising, but somehow it is for some people on the ground, because we tend to respond to climate change by building better water protection and dealing with better water systems and infrastructure. And what we found on the ground is that there are many other explanations of climate risk, for example, that lead to different types of solutions. And we will see a little bit of what those solutions are. Climate change action in Latin America and the Caribbean must be based on sustained dialogue and cannot be dissociated from a political agenda aimed at redressing social and environmental injustices. So again, some keywords here: it must be based on dialogue. Dialogue is crucial dialogue is necessary if we want to deal with climate change. We need to listen to what people are saying on the ground. We need to understand better what they're doing. We need to understand their narratives, their explanations of risk, their understandings of risk. And I think Roberto's presentation this morning is going to be key for helping us researchers understand those epistemologies that we have to use and understand in order to deal with these issues. And the second keyword here is maybe this idea of a political agenda that redresses social and environmental injustices. What we're finding on the ground is that climate change effects are closely related to vulnerabilities that have been created for years, if not decades, of neglect and racism and social injustices of all kinds, including violence and exclusion of social groups and marginalization of some social groups. And those vulnerabilities are closely linked to the way our political and economic and social systems work. And we need, if we're going to be serious about dealing with climate change, we need to understand those structures and we need to see how we can modify them. So ADAPTO was a project of dialogue. It was about creating dialogue between stakeholders and making and promoting spaces where universities can work with government and can work with NGOs and with municipalities and also with external universities. So it was about creating those spaces where different stakeholders can meet and dialogue and have what we call now disciplined conversation, having conversations that help to bridge barriers, that bridge gaps, that help teach us to listen and to learn to listen to what we're finding on the ground. And we found that it's easier to talk than to listen. But listening is key if we want to have a climate agenda that responds to the needs, expectations of people in informal settlements. Just one example, this man in Caracas told us, the ocean has never harmed me, only people have. And we found this incredibly profound because it reveals how he's understanding common risk in his small village in Caracas in Cuba. This villager, who incidentally is a fisherman, he is understanding risk from the sense of social dynamics that are happening in his place. Yes, climate change is provoking sea level rise and is facilitating and exacerbating climate related hazards that affect his island. But he's also concerned about not having food for tomorrow. He's also concerned about issues of segregation. He's concerned about not having a voice to influence government. So we're listening to these narratives and we're trying to understand them. And then we go back to government and we say, listen, what we're finding, and trying to create spaces for that dialogue has been key for us. And hopefully is going to be revealing important lessons for today. So I want to finish this introduction by thanking everybody in the ADAPTO team. Thank you very much for all the professors, scholars, and staff in Cuba, in Haiti, in Colombia, and in Chile. Thank you also to all the students who participated. We're talking about more than 200 students who were benefited by this project, interns, PhD, doctorates, and postdoctoral interns as well. And I want to thank particularly the communities, the citizens, and the local leaders we worked with. I have seen today that some of them are here in the room. Muchas gracias a los líderes locales que nos acompañan hoy. Es bastante importante para nosotros tenerlos. Es un gran placer también tenerlos. Así es que muchas gracias para todos. I'm going to switch again to English to introduce our main keynote speaker, Roberto Vargos.